I am the most noble princess of the Phoenix clan. The Dragon Emperor asked me to choose a husband from his clan. He said, whoever I choose will be the next Dragon Emperor. In my past life, I chose Song Hexuan, my childhood sweetheart, in order to help him endure the pain of shedding his horns and scales, and successfully ascend as a celestial dragon. I even gave him my own source spiritual core. But when he ascended to the throne of the Dragon Lord, what awaited me was a sword through my heart. Holding that pheasant spirit who had once stolen my identity, he swung his sword at me without hesitation.
If you hadn't insisted on marrying me, how could Liu Ying have suffered so much? If it weren't for using your inner core to help Liu Ying undergo nirvana and become a phoenix, I would never have associated with you.
He plucked out my phoenix tail feathers, severed my immortal bones, and dug out my inner core with his own hands. As I lay in a pool of blood, I watched him carefully present my inner core to that pheasant spirit. Just when I thought I was doomed to die, the pain all over my body suddenly vanished. I snapped my eyes open, only to realize I was drenched in a cold sweat.
Xingci, have you decided whom to choose as your husband?
Choosing a husband? I had actually been reborn on the day of the Dragon Clan's husband selection. Your Majesty, I think. Before I could finish my sentence, Song Hexuan, who was waiting among the princes, suddenly knelt down.
Father, I know Xingci likes me, but the only one I love is Liu Ying. Liu Ying and I have already pledged ourselves to each other under the witness of the heavenly Tao. If I betray her, I will surely face divine retribution, falling into the animal realm for eternity, never to be released.
The crowd erupted into an uproar. The Dragon Emperor's face instantly darkened. Everyone knew that I represented the entire Phoenix clan. As long as one married me, they could become the next Dragon Emperor of the Dragon Clan. For a moment, everyone began to grow restless. But in the next second, Song Hexuan spoke again.
I know Xingci cannot live without me. I am willing to marry her as an equal wife and take care of her for the rest of my life.
Impudent! What is that pheasant spirit, Wan Liu Ying, that she deserves to stand on equal footing with the princess of the Phoenix clan? It is but a mere oath. How dare she seduce you into committing such a foolish act? If this emperor kills her, the oath will naturally be broken.
Hearing the Dragon Emperor's threat, a flash of resentment crossed Song Hexuan's face.
What are you still standing there for? Haven't you been dying to marry me? The opportunity has been given to you. Why don't you hurry up and agree to it? You have stolen so many things from Liu Ying. If it weren't for her kind heart and willingness to overlook it, I would never have let you share a husband with her.
His words made me find it somewhat ridiculous that Wan Liu Ying was merely a pheasant spirit. Just because her identity had been mistaken once, she actually fantasized about flying up to the branch and becoming a real phoenix. When I was young, it happened to be the war between gods and demons. The Phoenix clan suffered a disaster and lost all their eggs. They mistakenly took back Wan Liu Ying, who was also an infant. It wasn't until 100 years later, when we could transform into our original forms, that father and mother realized they had taken the wrong person. Mother was kind-hearted and let her continue to live in the Phoenix clan, allowing her to enjoy the treatment reserved for a Phoenix princess. In the 10th year after I was found, the Dragon Emperor brought me to live in the Dragon Palace. This was because the dragon bloodline was declining and the ancestral dragon bloodline could barely produce offspring. Therefore, all the new Dragon Emperors were chosen from the collateral branches: flood dragons, snakes, carps, and alligators. As long as they survived the 9 heavens thunder tribulation, they could transform into dragons, and uniting with a Phoenix princess would not only give them a 100% chance of surviving the life and death tribulation, but also increase the purity of their bloodline. These matters were known to no one except the Dragon Emperor. They only knew that whomever the princess chose would be the next Dragon Emperor. Yet, Song Hexuan's speech today was almost a direct slap to the face of the Phoenix clan. If the Phoenix clan becomes enemies with the Dragon clan over this, I'm afraid it will only get harder to sustain the dragon lineage. The Dragon Emperor rushed down and slapped him hard across the face.
Chenxi, it is this beast of a son who is being absurd. As long as it appeases your anger, he is at your disposal.
I looked up at the Dragon Emperor. Your Majesty, I have already decided who I want to marry, including Song Hexuan. Everyone's eyes fell upon me. I slowly wrote that person's name in the palm of the Dragon Emperor's hand, and then communicated my plan to him via telepathy. The Dragon Emperor was slightly startled, but then he nodded.
Since you insist on this, So be it. I will have the wedding arrangements prepared for you.
His gaze landed on Song Hexuan.
Reflect on your actions behind closed doors these next few days. Do not make a fool of yourself again before the wedding.
Song Hexuan's habitually ice-cold face rarely showed a hint of smugness. That look seemed to say he knew all along that I would agree. I ignored his gaze and only cast my eyes toward a corner. Standing there was a youth with sharp brows and starry eyes. The tiny flood dragon horns on his head were dark and young, completely different from my past life. The Dragon Emperor dismissed all the other princes and kept me back to speak a few words in private. When I finally left the palace, I discovered that Song Hexuan had not left yet. Wan Luing was still standing by his side. Seeing me come out, Song Hexuan immediately led Wan Luing forward by the hand.
Thank you, sister, for fulfilling the wish of Hexuan and me. If my parents' spirits are watching from heaven, they must be very happy in their hearts too.
Having said this, she reached up to wipe away her tears.
Why thank her for fulfilling it? The only one I want to marry is you. She should be the one thanking you for your generosity. If you hadn't agreed, I certainly would not have married her as an equal wife.
When he spoke to Wan Luing, he was incredibly tender and affectionate. But the moment he faced me, he became extremely cold.
Lu Ying's parents died because of you. Now that she is being so generous, why don't you give her some magical treasures and divine artifacts as compensation?
Wan Luing's parents were a pair of pheasant demons. After taking me in, they treated me as their own. Unfortunately, this kind couple encountered a fierce beast and died while they were out. Because of this, my Phoenix divine fire was triggered, and I was eventually found by the Phoenix clan. In my past life, because of this matter, I constantly yielded and accommodated Wan Luing in every way. It wasn't until I was on the verge of death that I learned from her own mouth that she was actually the one who had lured the fierce beast over in our past life. In order to get rid of me, she didn't even hesitate to murder her own biological parents. I stared at them coldly, saying nothing. Seeing this, Wan Luing gently tugged at Song Hexuan's sleeve. As if remembering something, Song Hexuan cleared his throat and said,
Xingci, I have something to tell you.
I glanced at him disdainfully and asked, what is it?
You heard what Father Emperor said today. Lu Ying's magical powers are weak. She will inevitably be bullied after we marry.
I spoke with a half smile. You usually give her so many magical artifacts. Who would dare to bully her? In the past, I loved him and always wanted to give him the best. But every time I gave him top-grade magical artifacts, they would always end up with Wan Luing the very next day. He seemed to recall this as well, yet he spoke as if it were only natural.
How can magical artifacts compare to one's own magical power? Without hesitation, Song Hexuan stated his demand. I want to borrow your inner core.
At that moment, my mind went blank with a loud buzz. The pain of having my inner core cut out alive in my past life was etched deep into my bones. The hatred in my heart almost overwhelmed my rationality. At that very moment, I almost struck out to kill both of them on the spot. But at the last second, I forced myself to suppress it. Death was merely the easiest escape. With a dark expression, I said, do you know what it means for an inner core to leave the body? Without my inner core, I will lose all my magical powers, and my life could even be in danger.
We are husband and wife. Why are you still bickering over such trivial things? If you hand your inner core over to Lu Ying, I guarantee you will be unharmed. If you refuse...
He left his threat unfinished, but I understood immediately. In my past life, didn't he also, without the slightest hesitation, gouged out my inner core alive for Wan Luing's sake? I stared at him coldly. For a moment, the atmosphere grew tense and frozen. Under my powerful pressure, Wan Luing's face grew increasingly pale. Even Song Hexuan's expression gradually became strained. Just then, a deep voice called out,
Princess Chenxi, the Dragon Emperor sent me to find you.
I turned my head to look. The newcomer was none other than the Black Flood dragon youth I had seen in the main hall. Although he had not yet transformed into a dragon, he was able to stand under my pressure without his expression changing in the slightest. I withdrew my pressure and smiled at him. Then let us go.
Wait.
Disregarding Wan Luing, who could barely stand beside him, Song Hexuan only glared at the youth with displeasure on his face.
This lowly black flood dragon. What business does he have speaking with you?
This youth will be my future husband, so naturally, we have plenty to talk about. However, I could not be bothered to explain so much to Song Hexuan. I only spoke coldly. Since you have the energy to worry about this, you had better properly prepare for the Dragon Transforming Pool trial in 5 days. 5 days from now would be the Dragon Transforming Pool trial, which opens only once every 500 years. At that time, Everyone who wishes to transform into a dragon will head there to draw down the 9 heavens' lightning tribulation upon themselves, using the power of lightning to shed their horns and scales and ascend to dragonhood in one fell swoop. The power of lightning is immense. With the slightest slip-up, one could be struck back to their original form, or worse, even reduced to ashes. Therefore, most dragon scions choose to undergo the lightning tribulation in separate stages. It takes at least 3,000 to 4,000 years, and up to 10,000 years, to finally transform into a dragon. In my past life, relying on the protection of my inner core and phoenix wings, Song Hexuan became the first in tens of thousands of years person to ascend to dragonhood in a single tribulation. For a time, his glory was unmatched. Once the serious matter was brought up, his attention was indeed diverted. He said calmly,
You need not worry about that. I am the foremost among the dragon princes of this generation. A mere lightning tribulation is nothing. Even without your help, I can successfully ascend to dragonhood 5 days from now. Just wait in peace for me to marry you.
I remained silent. Out of the corner of my eye, I indeed saw a flash of jealousy cross Wan Luiying's eyes as she stood nearby. Having finished speaking, they left together, side by side. I watched their retreating figures and asked the young man casually, Lu Xingci, did the Dragon Emperor tell you everything? Hearing this, he looked up at me with a peculiar obsessiveness in his eyes. I watched him kneel respectfully and bow to me.
Please rest assured, Your Highness. I, Lu Xingci, hereby swear to the heavenly Tao, if I ever fail your highness in the future, may I die without a place of burial.
Thunder surged in the sky above, and then vanished without a trace. He had actually used his primordial spirit to seal the oath. My heart stirred slightly. I helped him rise from the ground, and tied the jade pendant representing the Phoenix clan's son-in-law to his waist. I believe you. I returned to the palace the Dragon Emperor had built for me. Before I even stepped through the door, the little sparrow fairy, who served me, ran toward me with a sobbing voice.
Your Highness, they want to chop down the parasol tree you planted.
I snapped my head up. After rushing to the main courtyard, I discovered that the parasol tree I had spent 100 years of painstaking effort to grow had been chopped down to the roots by Song Hexuan. This tree was given to me by my mother queen when I left the Phoenix clan. She said the parasol tree is the home of the Phoenix, no matter where I am. As long as I see this parasol tree, I am home. When it was first planted, it was but a speck of tender green. I tended to it day after day until it finally grew lush and canopy-like. Yet a century of hard work destroyed took only a brief moment. With reddened eyes, I glared at Song Hexuan. What right do you have to chop down my parasol tree?
It's just a worthless tree. So what if I chopped it down? Luiying likes phoenix blossoms. From now on, you are only allowed to plant phoenix blossoms here.
I sneered. This is my palace. I will plant whatever I want. Could it be that you can't even provide her with a place of her own? He was only one of many candidates of the Dragon Clan. Before becoming the crown prince, all the dragon sons lived in the same grand palace. He looked at me with hatred.
Isn't what is yours also mine? I am merely making arrangements in advance. If you anger me, I can choose not to marry you at any time.
Having said this, Song Hexuan tried to find a trace of panic on my face, but seeing that my expression remained cold throughout, he then coaxed me with soft words.
I am also doing this for your own good. If you behave yourself, I will favor you first and let you give birth to the legitimate son of the Dragon Clan.
At this moment, I finally lost all patience. Song Hexuan, stop flattering yourself. My husband could never be you in this lifetime. Naturally, he did not believe it, assuming I was merely speaking out of anger.
If you don't marry me, who else can you marry? That day, the Dragon Emperor himself said he would prepare the wedding for us.
Looking at his highly confident manner, I sneered in my heart. What he did not know was that the wedding was indeed prepared for him, except his bride would be nothing but a wild pheasant. 5 days later, everyone gathered at the dragon transformation pool. To my surprise, Wan Luiying actually tagged along this time. For a moment, everyone's eyes fell upon them. Seeing me, Song Hexuan immediately stepped forward and said,
Chenxi, I'm counting on you this time. Now that Luiying is also by my side, I will look after you in the future as well.
I remained silent. He didn't seem to care either, his proud and confident gaze merely sweeping across the other anxious princes from time to time. Suddenly, Song Hexuan's gaze locked intently on something. Then, He strode toward Lu Xingci, his face filled with unprecedented rage.
The jade pendant that symbolizes the phoenix consort. Why is it in your possession?
Song Hexuan stared fixedly at Lu Xingci, looking as though he wanted to tear him to pieces. Lu Xingci showed no fear whatsoever, only staring back coldly. Song Hexuan was instantly enraged by his attitude. Just as he was about to lose his temper, Wan Luing stepped forward and grabbed his arm.
Hexuan. How could that jade pendant possibly be real? It must just be a lookalike. The trial is about to begin. Someone of his caliber might not even survive a single lightning strike. Let's not stoop to his level.
Hearing this, Song Hexuan's expression softened slightly. He nodded and gently squeezed Wan Luing's hand. I watched them coldly, finding the display utterly amusing. A moment later, the Dragon Emperor arrived. He opened the Dragon Ascension pool, sending the clansmen to face the trial one by one. Most of them could only withstand a single bolt of lightning tribulation, and the best among them only managed 3. A flicker of disappointment passed through the Dragon Emperor's eyes at the sight, until it was Song Hexuan's turn. He stepped forward with absolute confidence, and Wan Luing actually followed closely beside him. Everyone looked at each other in bewilderment. The Dragon Ascension pool was incredibly formidable. A low-level demon like Wan Luing would be instantly reduced to ashes upon the very first contact.
Don't be afraid. Do you still not trust my strength? Besides, there is still Shen Chenxi. With her here, she definitely won't just stand by and watch me fail.
Wan Luing's eyes darkened upon hearing this. She actually raised her head and spat out her inner Dan. That inner Dan was not large. Once the inner Dan left her body, her face instantly turned pale and lifeless, and even her hair gradually turned a mottled white.
Luiying, what are you doing? We agreed that you would only stay by my side and keep me company. Letting your inner Dan leave your body will affect your future cultivation.
Though her face was pale, Wan Luing still smiled as she spoke.
Hexuan, I know my magical power is low, unlike the Phoenix Princess, but I always want to do something for you. Let this inner Dan help you cross your tribulation.
Song Hexuan's eyes were filled with deep emotion. The other clan members looked at each other upon seeing this.
What use is that little pheasant spirit's inner Dan? It won't even last a second before being struck to pieces. It seems she truly loves him. What kind of charm does the Song Hexuan actually have to be so popular?
She is certainly not afraid of death. If Song Hexuan can't withstand this lightning tribulation, the first thing to shatter will be her inner Dan. Without an inner Dan, she will lose all her magical power and can only wait for death.
She only did it because she thinks Princess Chenxi will help him with all her might. The Phoenix clan has secret methods of nirvana that can help him withstand this lightning tribulation. I don't know what is so good about this man, that Her Highness the Princess is so utterly devoted to him.
The crowd discussed animatedly, all with a hint of envy in their eyes. I only watched coldly. In my previous life, this scene did not happen. Because of this, I was even more curious about what would follow. With a face full of excitement, Song Hexuan stood in the middle of the dragon transformation pool. The golden divine water flowed slowly. He actually summoned 9 bolts of 9 heavens mysterious lightning all at once. The sky above the dragon transformation pool instantly darkened. Purple gold lightning surged amidst the clouds. Everyone stared at the scene in dumbfounded shock. The Dragon Emperor said in disbelief,
Has he lost his mind? To actually summon 9 tribulation lightning bolts at once. Since ancient times, not a single soul has ever been able to take them all on at once.
Someone else cried out in alarm.
With a tribulation lightning of this scale, even with the Phoenix Princess assisting him by his side, she will likely end up severely injured, with her internal energy completely depleted.
Not only the onlookers, even Wan Luing watched with wide eyes and a gaping mouth. Clearly, she had not expected Song Hexuan to be this mad, daring to try to take them all on at once. I raised my eyes and watched coldly. Indeed, in our past life, didn't he disregard my safety in the exact same way? This time, I want to see just what he relies on to withstand this tribulation lightning. With a deafening rumble, the lightning could be seen fully condensing, about to strike down. Song Hexuan looked toward me, his eyes filled with excitement.
Shen Chenxi, what are you still waiting for? Come and help me cross the tribulation.
But I only stood to the side, watching coldly. Thinking I hadn't heard him clearly, he couldn't help but take a step in my direction.
Shen Chenxi,
Do you still want to marry me or not?
isn't helping me transform into a dragon the exact reason you stayed here? Why haven't you acted yet?
Seeing that I remained standing there as cold as ice without moving, on his face, which was usually either indifferent or smug, a trace of panic finally appeared.
Chenxi, at a time like this, stop joking around. If these 9 tribulation lightning bolts strike me, I will really die. Do you have the heart to let me die?
I recalled how, after marrying him in our past life, he always treated me with cold indifference. Back then, I thought it was just his natural personality. It wasn't until I secretly caught him meeting Wan Luiying in private. Back then, his eyes were filled with tenderness as he gently massaged Wan Luiying's slightly red hand with heartache.
The Phoenix clan is truly out of line. It wasn't your intention to take Shen Chenxi's place. How could they neglect you like this?
I watched in silence, indignation rising in my heart. It was clearly Wan Luiying who had coveted the Phoenix clan's secret treasure and used her identity to try and steal our 10,000-year-old sacred core, only to end up in this state because she was caught. If she hadn't wept bitterly and begged my imperial father and mother to spare her, she would have been burned to ashes by the divine fire long ago. This matter, Song Hexuan knew the truth clearly. Back then, he had even frowned and remarked,
"Insatiably greedy."
Yet now, every word out of his mouth was an accusation. I wanted to rush out and confront him, but unexpectedly felt an unbearable pain in my abdomen. An excruciating pain tore through my belly, as if a raging fire was burning inside me, tearing my internal organs apart. I rolled on the ground in agony. As I neared the brink of collapse, a pair of moon-white, dragon skin combat boots stopped in front of me. I looked up, only to see Song Hexuan holding a long sword, watching coldly. In the next second, blood splattered. Amidst the agonizing pain, I lost my own inner core. At the thought of this, I could barely resist the urge to tear him into 10,000 pieces. As the heavenly tribulation lightning solidified in the sky, as if finally sensing that something was wrong with me, Song Hexuan instantly panicked.
Chenxi, you?
In the next second, before he could finish his sentence, the first bolt of lightning crashed down with unstoppable force. The purple gold lightning, carrying immense power, struck Song Hexuan squarely. He had summoned 9 of these lightning bolts at once, layer upon layer, each one several times more powerful than an ordinary tribulation bolt. Song Hexuan was already in a state of utter panic and actually forgot to channel his spiritual energy to resist. With a miserable shriek, he spat out a mouthful of bright red blood. Wan Luiying's face filled with terror. In the blink of an eye, her tiny inner core shattered instantly with a loud crack. Spiritual energy instantly drained away from Wan Luiying's body. Her face paled completely. Blood trickled down from the corner of her mouth. Even more terrifying was her originally lovely and youthful face, which was slowly shriveling up. More and more wrinkles appeared on her face. Countless members of the dragon clan cast their eyes upon her face. Wan Luiying covered her face tightly, crying out,
"No, don't look at me. Please, don't look at me. Hexuan, Hexuan, save me."
Unfortunately, Song Hexuan could barely protect himself and was unable to answer her. That bolt of lightning had clearly damaged Song Hexuan's core bones. Unable to support his weight, he fell to his knees on the ground, looking utterly disheveled at this moment. As if filled with regret, he looked up at me, finally casting aside all his pride.
Chenxi, save me. Please save me. I am your future husband. How can you bear to watch me be struck to death by the lightning?
Hearing this, under the watchful gaze of everyone, I took a step and walked toward him. A look of wild joy instantly erupted on Song Hexuan's face. He braced himself with his arms, struggling to stand up, his voice trembling with excitement.
Chenxi, I knew you still cared for me in your heart. Quickly help me block this lightning tribulation. Once I transform into a dragon, I will surely crown you as my queen, and I will never fail you in this lifetime.
Stepping over the scattered sparks of lightning on the ground, I walked straight past him to the young man standing at the very front of the crowd. Under the deathly silent gazes of everyone present, I raised my hand and gently took hold of Lu Xingci's cool wrist. His entire body stiffened, and he lowered his eyes to look at me. In those dark eyes, which always hid restraint and obsession, a brilliant spark of light instantly erupted, and even the tips of his ears turned a light red. Yet he immediately turned his hand to pull me behind him to protect me, his back straight and firm, shielding me from the residual power of the lightning spilling from the dragon transformation pool. I raised my eyes, met with the collective, astonished gasps of the crowd, and said, word by word, "Whoever said you were my husband, I have already agreed with the Dragon Emperor to choose Lu Xingci as my husband, with the jade pendant of the Phoenix clan as proof." The moment the words fell, the entire dragon transformation pool fell into a dead silence, before instantly erupting into an uproar. No one expected that I would choose Lu Xingci.
She actually chose Lu Xingci, that most unremarkable black dragon from the branch family? Is she insane? Passing over a brilliant talent of the dragon clan like Song Hexuan to choose a lowly black dragon?
The surrounding discussions were deafening, but I did not care in the slightest. Lu Xingci was merely an unfavored young dragon. He had a quiet and steady personality, unlike the other youths of the dragon clan, who always liked to show off in front of me to curry favor. Most of the time, he would just watch me silently. On the rare occasions our eyes met, even the tips of his ears would turn red. In my past life, when my core was gouged out, and I was dying and thrown onto the mass grave by Song Hexuan, it was Lu Xingci who risked being ground to dust to snatch me back from the jaws of countless fierce beasts. He protected me all the way back to the Phoenix clan's Wudong forest, personally erected a tombstone for me, and guarded it for 3 whole years. Many people admired me, but most of them only did so because I was the Phoenix princess, knowing that marrying me would grant them great power in the dragon clan. Only Lu Xingci was different. At this thought, my gaze fell upon Song Hexuan once more. In our past life, Song Hexuan only dared to summon 3 heavenly lightning bolts. By the time the 3 bolts had fallen, he was already covered in wounds, but he was unwilling to accept this. Although marrying me would make him the Dragon Emperor, he did not want to rely on mere connections. He wanted to prove his own strength. So, he secretly sent me a voice transmission.
Xingci, quickly lend me a hand.
I had secretly channeled the Nirvana art and secretly protected him with my own inner core, which damaged my core and took a full 200 years to heal. But because of this, I was left with a chronic ailment. Later, he became the first Dragon Emperor to survive 9 heavenly tribulations at once, worshipped by tens of thousands of people, no matter who it was. Whenever they mentioned him, they always called him the 1 in a million Dragon Emperor. But in this life, he is too greedy. With the experience of his past life, he actually disregarded everything and summoned 9 heavenly tribulations all at once. How could he care if I got hurt? Or if I was left with a chronic ailment? From beginning to end, Song Hexuan only ever cared about himself. What a pity. My gaze fell on the faintly rolling thunder. I'm afraid that in this lifetime, Song Hexuan won't even be able to survive the second strike. Just as the thought crossed my mind, Song Hexuan suddenly showed a look of terror.
No.
A thick purple gold lightning bolt struck instantly, crashing heavily into the dragon transformation pool. Sparks of electricity also flashed within the golden water. Everyone's eyes fell upon the misty dragon transformation pool. The onlookers from the dragon clan instantly erupted into a frenzy. Uproarious chatter rose and fell.
Oh my god. Song Hexuan actually fainted outright. He is the prince with the greatest hope of transforming into a dragon in the dragon clan. How could he fail so miserably?
After a long moment, the Dragon Emperor let out a sigh, then raised his hand to disperse the roaring thunder still in the sky. My gaze fell into the pool, only to see Song Hexuan lying bloodied in the water, having completely lost consciousness.
He is, after all, an outstanding youth of our dragon clan.
The Dragon Emperor explained to the crowd, and then raised his hand to channel a stream of pure spiritual energy into Song Hexuan's body. Song Hexuan slowly woke up and was pulled out of the dragon transformation pool in a pathetic state. The attendants who used to respect him now had a touch of contempt in their eyes. Wan Luing was moved to tears, and she wanted to speak, but amidst the chaotic clamor, no one paid her any attention. The Dragon Emperor's gaze fell upon me, and I nodded to him nonchalantly. It was indeed I who had the Dragon Emperor save Song Hexuan. This subtle movement was instantly caught by Song Hexuan. His eyes lit up, and he actually stumbled toward me, falling straight to his knees with a thud.
Chenxi, I was wrong.
At this moment, his face was filled with deep regret.
Chenxi, please forgive me. I only want you. In the future, I will dedicate myself entirely to you. I will never dare to have any other foolish desires.
I watched as he held his breath, looking at me with anxiety, feeling nothing but immense satisfaction in my heart. I raised my foot and kicked him away. Song Hexuan instantly showed a look of utter astonishment. I bent down and leaned close to his ear, so close that I could almost smell the fear radiating from him. Song Hexuan, when you personally cut out my inner core in our past life, did you ever foresee today? His pupils suddenly shrank, and he stared at me in disbelief. I stood up and didn't spare him another look, only holding Lu Xingci's hand as we walked toward the dragon transformation pool. Go on. I will be right here with you. But for some reason, he stood in place, completely motionless. What is it? Everyone's eyes were fixed on us, and even the Dragon Emperor looked at him in confusion.
He doesn't want to. Shen Chenxi, do you really think everyone loves you?
Lu Xingci's gaze was gentle, with what seemed like endless affection hidden in his eyes. Your Highness, I want to try on my own. I was taken aback. He gently squeezed my hand.
This lightning tribulation is no small matter. I know your highness possesses immense magical power, but you are a phoenix. If you were to be injured by the lightning tribulation, you wouldn't be able to easily dissipate the power of the lightning yourself. I do not wish for your foundation to be damaged because of this.
I met his earnest gaze, my heart trembling slightly. Before I could even sort out my thoughts, Lu Xingci let go of my hand. The golden water rippled with his footsteps as he walked to the center of the trial platform and sat down cross-legged. Thunder began to gather slowly in the sky. The onlookers looked up, their expressions turning into disappointment.
How is there only one bolt?
Lu Xingci kept his back perfectly straight, his eyes half closed, his expression as calm as a deep pool. His fingertips slowly formed the dragon transforming hand seal, and his previously restrained Jiao energy began to surge quietly. Pale purple spiritual energy lingered around him like mist, flowing slowly along his meridians. The next second, the lightning, like a startled dragon, crashed down heavily into the dragon transforming pool. Everyone was stunned. This first bolt of lightning was actually more terrifying than the second and third bolts of the others. This also proved that his cultivation was far deeper than anyone else's. Looking at those who once showed disdain and contempt now wearing shocked expressions, I couldn't help but smile. After all, in our past life, Lu Xingci had braved 5 divine lightning bolts all on his own. Bolt after bolt of lightning crashed down, all the way until he took the 5th. I thought he would stand up, but to my surprise, he remained as still as a mountain. Lu Xingci. I watched him with a look of confusion. By now, he was covered in wounds, seemingly pushed to his absolute limit. Yet he only smiled at me. I can do this. The next second, a massive flash of lightning crashed down. I couldn't help but wait anxiously. In just a few seconds, the thunder dispersed. He had actually surpassed his past life and taken 6 heavenly lightning bolts all by himself. If not for Song Hexuan's deeds in the past life, he would be the greatest of the Dragon Clan.
6 heavenly lightning bolts. He actually endured 6 tribulation lightning bolts all on his own. Before, I thought he was just average. Who would have thought he was hiding his strength so deeply?
I watched him sway as he stood up and bowed to the Dragon Emperor. A look of satisfaction immediately appeared on the Dragon Emperor's face. Just as he was about to step out of the dragon transforming pool, I suddenly spoke up. Wait.
He slowly walked over.
His pupils contracted slightly. In the next second, the thunderclouds gathered once more.
Be careful.
I held his hand. Don't be afraid. For the final 3 lightning strikes, I will lend you a helping hand.
Your Highness, you mustn't. I can do this myself.
I know you can. I raised my hand and gently placed my index finger against his lips. On this day, Lu Xingci was destined to be recorded in the annals of the Dragon Clan. Looking at the earnestness in my eyes, his Adam's apple bobbed slightly, and he ultimately stopped refusing.
Then we shall do this together.
The moment those words left his mouth, the phoenix divine fire within me erupted into flames, intertwining with the surging spiritual energy on his body and soaring straight into the sky. It actually caused auspicious clouds of light to ripple across heaven and earth. The onlookers of the Dragon Clan instantly held their breath, their eyes filled with shock.
This is actually the auspicious sign of the dragon and phoenix harmonizing. Since ancient times, no one has ever, while undergoing tribulation in the dragon transforming pool, triggered such a phenomenon of heaven and earth. This kid, Lu Xingci, is truly blessed with immense fortune.
Lu Xingci sat down where he was and mobilized his core origin with all his might. The flood dragon mark on his brow suddenly lit up. I slowly walked behind him and spat out my natal spiritual elixir. Channeling the great art of nirvana, I slowly channeled the divine fire into Lu Xingci's body through the elixir. Immediately after, 3 purple gold lightning bolts, carrying thunderous power, struck down one after another. Each bolt of lightning was more powerful than the last. The moment the final flash of lightning dispersed, the world suddenly fell silent. A moment later, the divine water of the dragon transforming pool surged wildly. Auspicious clouds gathered from all over the sky. A blinding light erupted from around Lu Xingci. His dark, immature flood dragon horns transformed into true dragon horns. His fine dragon scales turned into true dragon scales gleaming with cold light. After a dragon's roar resonated across the 4 seas, a giant, ink-black true dragons soared into the sky, circling and dancing amidst the clouds of the highest heavens. Everyone present at the dragon-transforming pool froze on the spot, looking up at the sky with faces full of shock.
The dragon's body is so vigorous and athletic, and its scales and claws are shining with brilliance. This is the ancestral dragon lineage, the purest of bloodlines. This young black flood dragon has actually defied heaven to change his fate. It is truly a miracle unseen throughout the ages.
For 10,000 years, no flood dragon has ever awakened the ancestral dragon lineage. Seeing it today is truly an eye-opening experience.
One after another, the crowd knelt down devoutly. I watched with a smile, feeling extremely warmed in my heart. As was only right and proper, Xingci became the new Dragon Emperor of the Dragon Clan. The former Dragon Emperor bestowed many magical treasures upon him for this. On this day, I was tasting tea when I heard a clamor outside. When the little sparrow fairy returned, she looked indignant.
Your Highness, Song Hexuan has come to see you. He even brought Wan Luiying with him. How does he have the nerve to come to you? Back when you liked him, he used you in every possible way. Even though he knew Wan Luiying hated you, he still insisted on loving her.
A man's love is not necessarily true love. My status is noble. When he was by my side, he only felt restricted everywhere and dependent on another's pleasure. As time went on, his pride and temperament became twisted. Wan Luiying is weak, lonely, and helpless, relying on him for everything. It happened to satisfy his pathetic vanity, so of course he thoroughly enjoyed it. But two bad things are different now. He lost the position of Dragon Emperor, and Wan Luiying's inner core is completely destroyed. Now that they have reached such a dead end, that deep affection he prided himself on probably won't withstand even the slightest test of reality. I stepped out of the door with an easy grace, only to see Wan Luiying standing beside Song Hexuan, trembling with fear. I have yet to congratulate you. May the two lovers live happily ever after. Song Hexuan's expression contorted for a moment. He glared fiercely at Wan Luiying. She and I are not lovers.
Chenxi, she deceived me. She actually put a lover's curse on me.
I raised an eyebrow, not expecting there to be such a twist. Seeing the smile on my face, he also seemed to breathe a sigh of relief.
I love you. If this bitch hadn't used the lover's curse to bewitch me, how could I have ever hurt you? Chenxi, you must believe me.
Song Hexuan, do you really think I know nothing about the lover's curse? If she wanted to control you, she would have to be stronger than you. But you are a dragon. Even if you didn't survive the 2 tribulation lightnings to become a true dragon, you are still a dragon. She is just a measly pheasant demon. How could she possibly control you?
Yes, her magic power is weaker than mine, but she secretly cut your hair, using your strands of hair to redirect my feelings for you onto her.
He thought I still harbored feelings for him, thinking that as long as he coaxed me, I would take the bait, but he was wrong. This time, I only raised my hand and slapped him hard across the face. Song Hexuan's head was immediately whipped to the left by the blow. He looked at me in disbelief. Even if that is true, so what? The things you did to hurt me, do you really think they can just be wiped clean? Song Hexuan, I might as well tell you, as things stand now, whether you were passive or active, it has nothing to do with me. For the rest of your life, you are bound to Wan Luiying. You will live in the gutter forever. His whole body shuddered. He reached out, trying to grab me, just as I was about to step back. A vast, majestic pressure descended from the sky, slamming heavily onto Song Hexuan, and pinned him down firmly.
How dare you touch my woman?
Xingci walked over with a dark expression. He came to my side.
Chenxi, step aside for a moment.
The moment Xingci's gaze swept over Song Hexuan, his dragon aura suddenly erupted.
A mere insect is not fit to act presumptuously here.
Xingci, you lowly black flood dragon. If it weren't for you, I should have been the Dragon Emperor. You stole everything from me. Today, I will tear you into 10,000 pieces.
His eyes looked as if they were about to burst. A long sword condensed in his palm, and he thrust it fiercely toward Xingci. But Xingci did not even knit his brows. He merely raised his hand, joined his fingers, and tapped casually toward the sword's edge. Clang! Under that seemingly feather-light finger, the long sword actually shattered inch by inch, breaking into several pieces and clattering to the ground. Song Hexuan stared down at the fragments of the sword scattered all over the ground, completely losing his mind.
No, impossible. This is impossible.
He quietly gathered strength at his fingertips inside his sleeve, secretly holding several spiritual needles. With a sudden flick of his wrist, those spiritual needles tore through the air, flying straight toward my vital points. In the nick of time, Xingci's figure flashed instantly. He stood firmly in front of me to shield me, and with a wave of his hand, all of those venomous spiritual needles were shattered into pieces. The last trace of gentleness in Lu Xingci's eyes completely vanished. He no longer held back. The dragon chi around him erupted violently, and the majestic illusion of a pitch-black true dragon rose into the air behind him. The low-pitched dragon roar shook the entire courtyard, making it tremble. He raised his hand and struck out with his palm, like Mount Tai pressing down with crushing force, striking hard towards Song Hexuan. Song Hexuan did not even have a chance to dodge before he was hit squarely in the chest by this palm strike. He was sent flying backward like a kite with a broken string, crashing heavily onto the ground and vomiting a large mouthful of fresh blood. Lu Xingci walked slowly to stand in front of him, leaning down slightly. His eyes were as cold as 10,000-year-old ice, yet they carried an unquestionable authority.
She is my only wife in this lifetime, the future empress of the Dragon Clan. How dare you touch her?
Song Hexuan lay on the ground, glaring at him intensely, yet he could not even utter a single complete sentence, only able to let out a resentful and painful roar.
Get out.
Only then did Lu Xingci withdraw his aura. Turning around to walk quickly over to me, he gently held my hand and asked in a low voice, "Are you alright?" I nodded and smiled at him. He carefully glanced at my expression and suddenly said,
I have something to give you.
With some curiosity, I walked outside with him. After taking only dozens of steps, I couldn't help but widen my eyes. Not far away stood a parasol tree as tall as two people. The parasol tree had lush green leaves and was growing very vigorously. Lu Xingci pulled me to stand beside the parasol tree, looking at me with a gentle gaze.
I know that the Phoenix clan nests in parasol trees, which is a yearning deeply engraved in your bones. So I made a special trip to the Phoenix clan to obtain this parasol tree sapling and carefully transplanted it here, though it has not been long. And it is only this tall. Chenxi, give me a little more time. From now on.
His unfinished words were entirely swallowed by my kiss. Lu Xingci's pupils contracted, and his entire body froze on the spot. After a long moment, he finally came to his senses and held me tightly under that parasol tree which had yet to grow fully. We exchanged our very first kiss. I like it very much. Thank you, Xingci. Later, the other dragon princes went to the rivers, lakes, and seas. They were required to protect, according to the Dragon Emperor's decree. Even Song Hexuan was no exception. Unfortunately, because of the heavenly tribulation, he had lost most of his magical power and was ultimately assigned only to a tiny ditch. Wan Luiying was naturally unwilling and actually hatched a sinister plot to murder him and steal his dragon pearl. No one knew how Wan Luiying, who had lost all her magical power, managed to do it. They only knew that when Song Hexuan was found, he had already been dead for a long time, and that dragon pearl was shattered as well. To avoid panic, the nearby dragon princes burned his corpse to ashes. As for Wan Luiying, she died in a ditch not far away. Her corpse had reverted to its original form and had already begun to rot. When I heard this news, I smiled softly. Song Hexuan, oh Song Hexuan. He never did understand how terrifying a woman could be. I recalled the magical treasures he had given to Wan Luiying. Among them was a dragon binding cord. The day they left, I took back the other magical treasures, leaving behind only this single item. On the day of our grand wedding, auspicious clouds rolled across the 9 heavens, and the harmonious cries of dragons and phoenixes resonated across the 4 seas. The immortal peers of the dragon and phoenix clans gathered at the dragon palace, the sky full of phoenix flowers and the shimmering light of dragon scales intertwined, becoming a magnificent spectacle rarely seen in 10,000 years across the 3 realms. I was dressed in a crimson and gold bridal gown embroidered with phoenixes, wearing a crown of 9 phoenixes holding pearls upon my head. My long dress train trailed over the temple steps paved with spiritual jade, every step taken within Lu Xingci's steady and protective care. He wore a dark imperial robe adorned with black dragon patterns, his posture as tall and straight as a green pine, holding my hand tightly from beginning to end. The warmth of his palm was burning hot, dispelling all the coldness of my past life one by one. After the master of ceremonies finished the announcements, the deities of the 4 seas bowed together to the new empress. Standing beside Lu Xingci, I looked at the tenderness in his eyes that belonged solely to me, suddenly feeling that all the suffering and tragic death of my past life were merely to exchange for this lifetime's mutual and perfect fulfillment. As night fell and the guests dispersed, only the 2 of us remained in the vast dragon bedchamber. Lu Xingci clumsily yet carefully removed the heavy phoenix crown for me, his fingertips brushing past the loose hair near my temples. The tips of his ears turned red.
Chenxi, From this day forward, I am the Dragon Emperor, and you are the Dragon Empress. These 4 seas and 8 wildernesses, I will accompany you across them all, and within this Dragon Palace, shall honor you as supreme.
Looking into his clear and sincere eyes, I couldn't help but stand on my tiptoes to kiss the corner of his lips. His body stiffened slightly, and then he gently reached out to wrap his arm around my waist, drawing me into his embrace. His hold so gentle, as if he was afraid of breaking me.
I know you suffered too much in your past life.
He buried his head in my neck, his voice low and full of heartache.
From now on, I won't let you shed another tear, nor will I let you suffer the slightest grievance.
The present Dragon Palace had long been carefully remodeled by Lu Xingci, becoming the layout I was most familiar with. As for the parasol tree that Song Hexuan had cut down in my past life, he had not only begged the Phoenix clan for a sapling, but also consumed his own dragon energy to nurture it day and night. In just half a year, it had grown into a towering tree, lush with leaves and branches. It blocked out the sun. He had also planted parasol tree forests all around the palace, stretching for miles. When the wind blew, the parasol leaves rustled, sounding just like the homeland of the Phoenix clan.
A phoenix nests only on a parasol tree. I will plant parasol trees all over the Dragon Palace for you, so you will always have a branch to perch on, and always have a place to call home.
The little sparrow fairy would say, with a smile, every day.
Your Highness, His Majesty the Dragon Emperor has transformed the entire Dragon Palace to look like the Phoenix clan's home. In all the 3 realms, there is no empress more favored than you.
As the Dragon Emperor, Lu Xingci had to handle the affairs of the Dragon Clan across the 4 seas every day, which were complex and tedious. But he never left me alone in an empty palace. Upon waking, he would first handle urgent official business, then return in person to accompany me for breakfast. I loved eating the mortal world's osmanthus cake and lotus seed soup, so he stationed celestial officials in the mortal realm permanently to purchase the freshest ingredients daily, allowing the celestial chefs to cook them according to my taste, with the sweetness and cooking time perfectly precise. Occasionally at night, I would be startled awake by nightmares of my past life, dreaming of Song Hexuan's sword piercing my heart, and dreaming of the excruciating pain of my inner core being gouged out alive. Every time I woke up in a cold sweat, Lu Xingci would immediately pull me into his arms, soothing me with his warm dragon energy, gently patting my back, and softly coaxing.
Don't be afraid, Chenxi. I'm here.
He never proactively brought up the pain of my past life, yet he would silently clear away everything that could trigger bad memories. Regarding the records of Song Hexuan in the Dragon Clan's archives, he personally ordered them to be sealed away. As for the celestial attendants in the Dragon Palace who once served Song Hexuan, he transferred them away one by one. Anyone from Song Hexuan's old faction could never appear before Her Highness Chenxi again. One afternoon, I sat under the parasol tree, preening my phoenix tail feathers. The pain of having my tail feathers plucked clean in my past life had long since faded. Now, my phoenix tail was even more brilliant and dazzling than before, shining a fiery crimson gold. The tips of the feathers shimmered with light, the symbol of the purest bloodline of the Phoenix clan. Lu Xingci walked up from behind and gently draped a cloak woven from 9-tailed fox fur and celestial silk over my shoulders. His fingertips brushed over my phoenix tail, his movement as gentle as if touching a rare treasure.
The wind is chilly. Don't sit for too long.
He sat down beside me and pulled me into his arms.
Once I finish handling the Dragon Clan affairs today, how about I accompany you back to visit your family? Father and mother have been wanting to see you.
My heart warmed, and I nodded in agreement. The moment we rode the clouds into the territory of the Phoenix clan, the 1,000-year-old parasol trees all over the mountains shed a flurry of pink and white petals in the wind. Father and mother were already waiting outside the main hall. Seeing Lu Xingci and me arriving side by side, mother's eyes welled with tears. She held my hand, looking me up and down.
Sheer, your suffering has finally turned into sweetness. Before we failed to see Song Hexuan's true colors and let you suffer such grievances.
Mother, it's all in the past. With Xingci here, I will never suffer any more grievances. In the main hall of the Phoenix clan, Lu Xingci respectfully bowed to the elders of the Phoenix clan, promising to love only me in this lifetime and to protect my peace for the rest of his days. His words were sincere, every single one coming from the heart. Everyone in the Phoenix clan was deeply comforted. Father held his hand and sighed.
The princess of our Phoenix clan has indeed married the right man.
After staying with the Phoenix clan for a few days, on the way back to the Dragon Palace, Lu Xingci held my hand as we strolled among the clouds, watching the sea of clouds churn and the sunset glow fill the sky.
Chenxi.
He suddenly spoke, his tone carrying a hint of boyish shyness.
Actually, in our past life, I saw you. Back then, when you were brutally killed by Song Hexuan digging out your core. Before your soul completely dispersed, I exhausted my entire cultivation to gather your remains for you and buried them under a sycamore tree.
He squeezed my hand tightly.
I was just a black dragon whom no one cared about, watching you love the wrong person and suffer those hardships, yet being utterly powerless to help. I could only guard you silently from the shadows. Back then, I swore an oath that if there were a next life, I would definitely protect you by your side and never let you suffer such pain again.
In my past life, that faint, protective presence I felt when I was on the verge of death indeed came from him. His deep affection did not begin in this life. It had been hidden for an entire lifetime. Actually, I had known all of this long ago. Leaning into his embrace, my tears fell silently. This time, it wasn't from pain, but from a heart overflowing with warmth and gratitude. Upon returning to the Dragon Palace, it happened to be the Dragon Clan's once in 500 years heaven worship grand ceremony. The Dragon Kings of the Four Seas all came to pay homage. Xingci announced in a loud, clear voice.
Our Empress, Shen Chenxi, is the princess of the Phoenix clan, unrivaled in her nobility. Henceforth, everyone in the Dragon clan shall treat the Empress with the same respect as they treat us. Anyone who disobeys the Empress shall be punished as a traitor to the clan.
As his voice fell, the Dragon Kings of the Four Seas all bowed and paid homage together, their voices shaking the heavens. Standing by his side, feeling the warmth coming from his palm, and looking at the countless immortals bowing below the platform, warmth surged in my heart. After the ceremony, I couldn't wait to drag Xingci along, to shed our awe-inspiring, celestial grand robes, change into the simple cotton clothes of ordinary mortal couples, and dive headfirst into the late spring bustle of the mortal world. It happened to be late spring in Jiangnan, and a gentle spring rain had just fallen last night. The cobblestone paths of the long street were washed clean, gleaming with a warm luster, with tiny cherry blossom petals still nestled in the crevices. The cherry trees along the roadside had shed pale pink remnants all over the ground, which swirled and floated away with every gust of wind, clinging to the hems of our robes. The parasol trees within the courtyard walls were sprouting tender, yellow buds, with leaves as thin as cicada wings, glowing translucent in the sunlight. With our fingers tightly locked, we strolled leisurely down the long street. He would always instinctively shield me on the inner side of the road, avoiding the children running toward us, and blocking the peddlers carrying shoulder poles for me. We walked and paused along the way, watching an old man making sugar sculptures paint with his ladle, instantly crafting lifelike dragon and phoenix patterns, which made the watching children clap and cheer. We watched a flower-selling old woman carrying a basket full of late cherry blossoms, smiling as she pinned a ducus sprig into my hair. We also squatted in front of steaming food stalls, tasting everything from crispy spring rolls to soft, chewy, sweet green rice balls and savory tofu pudding, savoring every single bite of the mortal world's most vibrant culinary delights. I spotted a Tonghulu stall at the entrance of an alley, with plump, bright red hawthorns coated in translucent syrup, glinting finely in the sunlight. I immediately stood on my tiptoes and bought a skewer. Taking a bite, the sweet and sour flavor instantly melted on the tip of my tongue. I quickly turned around and offered the Tonghulu to Xingci's lips. His eyes curved into a warm smile, and he took a bite, the doting affection in his eyes almost overflowing. His warm fingertips did not forget to gently wipe away the sugar crumbs clinging to the corner of my mouth. Strolling along the street, we reached a bustling tea house packed with people. Just as we walked to the entrance, we heard the sharp crack of the storyteller's gavel inside. The storyteller was raising his voice, recounting the old tales of the Dragon Clan.
Now, back then, the Dragon Prince Song Hexuan chose not to marry the noble Phoenix Princess, instead giving his heart to a pheasant demon. He abandoned the easily attainable throne of the Dragon Emperor and ended up losing all his magical power during his heavenly tribulation. In the end, he was betrayed and murdered by that very pheasant demon, leaving behind not even a trace of his bones. He truly got what he deserved.
The patrons below the stage instantly broke into sighs. Curses and sighs rose and fell in succession.
That man was far too heartless, betraying such true love, serving him right to end up like that.
How pitiful for that Phoenix princess who suffered so much back then. Fortunately, her misery has turned into happiness.
Now that the Dragon and Phoenix clans are at peace, and the Dragon Queen receives boundless devotion, this is indeed the best ending in the world.
I stood outside the crowd listening. Sensing my mood, Xingci gently patted the back of my hand. He leaned down to my ear and whispered, "It's all in the past."
Chenxi, from now on, I will be by your side. No one will ever be able to hurt you again.
I looked up at the overflowing tenderness and resolve in his eyes, smiling as I held his hand tightly in return. Yes. It's all in the past. When we returned to the Dragon Palace in the evening, the ground beneath the parasol trees was covered in fallen petals. Xingci took a jade pendant from his sleeve. It was of a warm, pure white throughout, carved with an exquisite phoenix pattern, and engraved with my name.
When I saw this in the mortal realm today, I knew at first glance it belonged to you.
He tied the jade pendant to my waist with his own hands, his fingertips gently brushing against the jade.
Chenxi, I do not seek to rule the three realms, nor do I seek eternal life. I only wish to nest with you like a phoenix in the parasol trees, to live in peace year after year, guarding each other for a lifetime, never to part.
I threw myself into his arms, holding him tightly, breathing in the crisp scent of ambergris on his body. All my words dissolved into a heart full of joy. As the night grew deeper, the moonlight spilled down, covering the entire parasol forest. Xingci leaned down to kiss me, from my forehead to my eyes, and then to the corners of my lips. It was gentle and lingering, cherishing me to the utmost. I closed my eyes, feeling his love. All the scars of my past life were, in this gentle kiss, completely healed. The little sparrow fairy stood outside the hall holding a cup of lotus heart tea, looking at the figures leaning against each other under the parasol tree, and quietly slipped away with a relieved smile on her lips. The parasol leaves of the Dragon Palace rustled in the wind, and the petals fluttered down, landing on our hair and shoulders, becoming the most gentle witness. In the long years ahead, across the 8 desolate corners of the 4 seas, the dragon will soar, and the phoenix will dance, year after year, never to be parted. The regrets of those fallen cherries were finally, by the fulfillment of the phoenix nesting in the parasol tree, completely made whole. I, Shen Chenxi, finally in this life, awaited my own years of peace and tranquility, and a lifetime of joy.